Hello Internet, Seth Skorkowski, and today we'll be taking a look at the Call of Cthulhu accessory, the Grand Grimoire of Cthulhu Mythos Magic, assembled and written by Mike Mason and Matthew Sanderson. Being such an old game as Call of Cthulhu is, there have been hundreds of spells that have appeared in various rulebooks and accessories and adventure modules, and the Grand Grimoire compiles all of them together, over 550 spells across 35 years of this game, and has updated them all to 7th edition. Now, of course, it's not every single spell that's appeared over that time. There have been a few spells that were just so similar to one another that they just went ahead and combined them into a single spell, and there were a few more that were just so hyper-specific to whatever particular adventure that they appeared in that they really weren't useful outside of that particular scenario. Such as Imbue from Fearful Passages, which, yeah, I think it was probably a good call not to include that spell. And instead of just listing them all out and expecting you to read through them one at a time just to get the idea of what they're all about, the book notes the categories of spells now, marking each spell with a special little glyph to denote what category it's in. So combat spells are noted with this little spiky turtle-looking thing, while folk magic is noted with this knife-winged angel symbol. Of course, many Mythos spells don't fall cleanly into one category or another, so they might be noted with multiple symbols to denote multiple categories, such as Dominate here, which is both a combat and influencing others. Now, because Mythos magic is more involved and mysterious than magic is in most other RPGs, the Grand Grimoire dedicates several pages to suggestions on tips on how to customize and add more of an occultish flair to your various spells. We get optional things that we could incorporate into our various spells, such as phases of the moon, or days of the week, or lunar and solar festivals that might be worked into the spell and its casting, or what needs to be done when it's cast, such as different magical effects that might be more potent on these particular days, or might be the only days that they can be cast. That really invokes some of Lovecraft's elements. I mean, the stars being right was a regular theme of his. And in the story, The Shadow over Innsmouth, both May-Eve and Samhain was specifically listed as being very important to the followers of Dagon. We also get ways that we can incorporate ley lines into the casting of spells, which is a big element that I really like because it adds kind of a different layer to how magic works in Call of Cthulhu. Oh yeah, picture this. The investigators are hired to look into a series of strange murders that are happening around the countryside. The victims found with their arms and legs splayed out in all sorts of strange angles. And then the heroes realize that the victims' arms and legs are following the exact ley lines that are intersecting at those points. So now the investigators are searching around through old books, trying to find the intersections of other ley lines that might be in the area, trying to find the location where those murderous cultists might strike again and stop them before they can do it. I also really dig the idea of magical residue that's left at the site of either frequent magic use or a site where some particularly powerful spell might have been cast, and how those locations that are now tainted with this magical residue might cause good or bad or just simply weird effects to any people that are there or any magic that's cast in that area from then on forward. We also get a huge list of possible components and more detailed descriptions of what constitutes the difference between a sacrifice versus just an offering, which I really appreciate them adding that. All these rules allow for a lot of keeper customization of magic. Remember that Mythos magic is meant to be strange and mysterious, and even identical spells that might appear in the same campaign but come from different Mythos tomes, they might actually now be very different than one another. One might require ley lines or sacrifice, while the other might require different components, such as gemstones or wood from a coffin. The book does incorporate some pretty good art. Most of it looks like the yellowed pages one might find in some sort of forbidden tome. I do like it, but personally, I'd have liked more diversity in the art, especially with some examples of what some of these spells might look like when they're actually cast. Now, the great bulk of the book is spell descriptions themselves, and it is a huge feat to have assembled all of these spells from the previous edition and then updated them to the 7th edition rules. It reminds me a lot of another favorite book of mine from a different game, which is Blackhand Street Weapons from Cyberpunk 2020, which has compiled all the weapons from all the books along Cyberpunk 2020 into one single place, and it is super handy for game masters. But one thing that I wish that the Grand Grimoire of Cthulhu Mythos Magic had done, that Blackhand Street Weapons did, is to list each entry's original location. Like, where was this originally published? It's a weird gripe, I know that, that, but I'd have loved some sort of notation on each of the spells as far as what its original appearance was, such as the bottom of Mind Cloud saying it came from 1990's Curse of Cthulhu. Not only would that sort of educate me on the history of the game and other keepers in the history of the game, but also point me and other keepers to any sort of older scenarios or supplements out there that we might not have been aware of before. Another thing that I would have liked is a little bit more of an expansion on the 7th edition spells that already appear in the Call of Cthulhu Keeper's Guide, Vore's Sign being one of the biggest one of those. It's a spell that in the Keeper's Guide left a bit too vague to my liking as far as how it affects other spells that it might be cast in conjunction with. But the description in the Grand Grimoire is the same one that's in the Keeper's Guide, which once again is a tiny gripe. But by the way, Keepers, how I interpreted the Vore's Sign is that casters who use that spell in conjunction with another spell get to change a single element about the other spell that they're casting, and they get to choose what element that is, such as if the spell originally affected only one target, now it can affect two, or maybe it halves the sanity loss, or halves the magic point cost, or it doubles the range, so only one effect is changed at the time that it's cast in conjunction with another spell, and the character has to declare what that is when they cast it. Speaking of spell descriptions, I did notice that there are some changes to spells that do appear in the 7th edition Keeper's Guide versus the Grand Grimoire. Right now I've only found one, but I haven't really done like a thorough side-by-side of all the spells back and forth. Wither Limb in the Keeper's Guide, the target loses 1 to 4 to 1 to 8 sanity, while in the Grimoire, the target and all the witnesses lose 0 to 1 to 3. I don't know why they're different. Maybe that was a mistake or it was an intentional correction. I don't know, but they are different. And there is no notation for that. So keepers, double check any spells that you're getting from the Keeper's Guide as well as the Grand Grimoire just to make sure that they're the same, or then just decide which one that you want to go with and make sure that they're consistent. Because my go-to once I picked up the Grand Grimoire was to go ahead and just go by the descriptions in there, even though we had already started playing a campaign. And Wither Limb was one of the spells that was already out in the campaign at the time, and I didn't realize they were different till we were in the middle of a game, and that was kind of an awkward moment. Tiny gripes aside, I really like the Grand Grimoire of Cthulhu Mythos Magic. I think it adds a lot to the game. However, this isn't a book that I would recommend to anyone but a keeper to pick up, and a keeper who is wanting to expand and explore the magic that they're using in their own game. So the book is not for everybody, but to those that it's for, it is fantastic. Now, while I do think this is a very handy and useful book, I mean, you can see by my line of frayed tabs here that I've actually used it quite a bit, I do confess a hair of disappointment at first when I first got it. Before I'd picked it up, I'd sort of gotten into my head certain things that I wanted that were going to be in the book that were not what the book was promising that they were going to give me. I had built a false expectation for myself because the book delivers exactly what it promised that it would. So what I would like, and I would love to see in some sort of future accessory released, hint hint, Chaosium there, is more about Mythos tomes. In the Keeper's Guide, we get a huge list of Mythos tomes, but only some of these are expanded upon, and I would love more, a lot more. And not just full descriptions of them, but tips on choosing what possible spells should go with each particular tome. And rules on writing my own Mythos tomes, or how a player character might write their own Mythos tome, either through intention or just the collection of their different various notes and journals, and what those might be considered at the end of a long campaign. Kind of like what Dr. Angel's box should be if from the Call of Cthulhu short story. How does that rank as a Mythos tome, just being a box of various newspaper clippings and journal notes? Like say we did a 1920s campaign and our characters kept all sorts of diaries and journals documenting their adventures and all of their encounters with the mythos. And now we're doing a modern-day campaign where the descendants of our old characters inherit all of those diaries and journals. How might these translate into Cthulhu Mythos tomes that our current characters could use? Or options about Mythos tomes that aren't in written form, like a modern-day scenario. How would we use a series of rambling entries from a missing journalist's voice recorder as a Mythos tome, or a box of VHS tapes that were found inside of an attic or a storage unit? Another thing that I was wanting is more information about cults, like a whole book about cults. How do they make them? How do they form? What are the different known cults are out there? Maybe stuff on some of the more common or popular cults that appear in the Call of Cthulhu universe. Keepers. Entries about the Brotherhood of Skin and the Silver Twilight and the Chapel of Contemplation. What scenarios do those cults appear in? That way I can kind of choose which scenarios to do if I'm wanting to follow a particular cult. So on and so forth. Just a lot more information about the various cults in the world. Finally, I'd like some more information about Mythos artifacts. We have a really good selection of magical relics and technology that's found in the Keeper's Guide, but I would like a lot more of it. I am sure that over the span of the game's long history, there is a wide selection of cool and dangerous artifacts that I might be able to bring into my campaign, and I'm sure a lot of the other keepers out there would like to bring into their own campaigns. Now, none of this, of course, is actually in the Grand Grimoire of Cthulhu Mythos Magic, and I can't hold that against it. The book delivered exactly what it said it was going to deliver, and it did a fantastic job of that. However, at the same time, I would love more like this from Chaosium, kind of make the Grand Grimoire the first in a series of accessories of different things that expand in the world that way keepers like myself could use, and kind of turn the Grand Grimoire into kind of like the first part of some sort of kind of new encyclopedia of different Cthulhu Mythos knowledge. Hey, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please give it a thumbs up. If you want to see some more of our stuff, such as game reviews and how-tos, just hit that subscribe button. Till next time, players, you have a great day. You need to start running more modern-day scenarios because this outfit does not get used enough.